using less plastic in your house or office? Yes, please let us know where you're from, state your country and organization. That would be amazing. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Good to see all of you. Next slide, please, Carissa. Well, for the French speakers, you have an interpretation channel so that you could hear the translation in French. So if you want to listen to one of the available language interpretation, you can click the interpretation button and select one of the languages from the menu. You can also choose whether or not you want to mute the audio from the original speaker. Next slide, please, Carissa. This is just the how to access the and for the interpretation channel in French, written in French. Yep. And now the mood is all set. Let's get this party started, shall we? And before we do, folks, let's go through some housekeeping matters before we do. So make sure, please, if your full name is displayed on your Zoom account, keep your microphone muted and to avoid disturbing the speakers, of course. There's a Q&A function on Zoom. If you want to ask your questions, these questions will be answered by the speakers during the allocated time for questions and answers. We'll also invite you to use the chat box once again to introduce yourselves and exchange informations and links with your fellow participants. This event is recorded, as you heard, and if you have any technical issues, please reach out to any of the GAIA staff via chat box. We have the amazing Carissa with us available on chat support. Thank you. We have the reminders, the housekeeping remarks in French as well, as you can see on your screen. And yeah, who's ready? Who's ready to get this party started? We are all here today to celebrate the launch of one thing and one thing only. This the new GAIA and Breakthrough from Plastic Africa publication titled Life Before Plastic, Demonstrating Traditional Practices of Reuse in Africa. This publication is the first of its kind to showcase examples of traditional practices made of natural materials widely used across the African continent as alternatives to plastic and provide insight into existing reuse and refill systems on the continent, whilst examining how reuse and refill can be made a stronger part of Africa's journey toward ending plastic pollution. Excuse me. So this publication is most timely in commemoration of the upcoming World Refill Day, which is on June 16, which is a day of action uniting our global community, as I said, every year on the 16th of June. I wish if it was every day, but yeah, it's the 16th of June. Remember the date. The aim is to create an alternative vision of the future and accelerate the transition away from single-use plastic towards refill and reuse systems. And yeah, we are super excited. I'm super excited to be launching the Life Before Plastic publication with all of you. And for those who are not familiar with GAIA, it's a global network of more than 800 grassroots groups and NGOs and individuals across the globe. They envision a just and zero waste world built on respect for ecological limits and community rights, where people are free from the burden of toxic pollution and resources are sustainably conserved, not burned or dumped. GAIA, they work to catalyze a global shift towards environmental justice by strengthening these grassroots social movements that advance solution to waste and pollution. Yay! So at this moment, at this interval, I would love to invite you all to please turn on your cameras so we could have a quick group photo with all of you with your party hats on, please. And if you don't have a party hat, please check out the cool Zoom filters we have on your screens below and choose one. Amazing. Look at you. Yes. And in 3, 2, 1. Big smiles, please. Let's have another one. In 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Perfect. Amazing. Beautiful. Beautiful. I know you're all eager to know about the publication. Yeah, and I'm sorry to keep you waiting, and I'm not going to keep you waiting anymore. So to start things off, I want to invite our speaker, Angel Françoise Fouté-Nwabufo, the founding president of FAHEDEF, Family, Health and Development Foundation in Cameroon, to share an exciting project her organization has started with young girls in Cameroon on eco-friendly, reusable, toxic-free sanitary pads. We also have a cool video demonstrating how these reusable pads are made. Please, Françoise, you have the floor. Thank you. Françoise, can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a really great pleasure and opportunity for me to be part of this launch, and I'm very, very grateful to take part of it. My name is Nenju Françoise Fouté Nwabufo. I'm from Cameroon and the coordinator of Family Health and Development Foundation, FAHEDEF, in Cameroon. Family Health and Development Foundation started in 2013. Yes, with some healthcare professionals that were very passionate about the life of people in the community. They came together to create Family Health and Development Foundation. And since then, we started working with our own personal funding because we're all workers. We do this as a part-time. So during our holidays, we take time to go to the local communities and carry out health actions. And like we say, family, when we come to the community, we are not just interested in the individual, but in the family as a whole. And we carry out a holistic care to families in the community. We've been having this burden of menstrual hygiene management, but we never started till this year. We've tried several times to start it, but we never had the opportunity or the funding to carry it out. But I think this is just the best time because before now, we did not have the knowledge about the eco-friendly kind of menstrual hygiene part we wanted to do. So we're looking for the technical expertise to accompany us in this, knowing that in our community, most of the young girls use materials that are not healthy during their menstrual period. And so we decided to start training them to do their own pads themselves. We decided to start helping them so that they can make their own pads by themselves with materials that are eco-friendly and readily available. So we went into that. But for us to do mass production, we had to use machine in order to produce in mass and distribute to the community. But then the thing is that every girl child in our community should know how to sew her own pad that she can use when she needs it, and then teach her how to keep it clean and give her the necessary materials to make sure she keeps this pad clean. And we like I said, there is a huge need for this. There's a very big need for this in our community, as we still have taxes on this commodity, which is making it quite a little bit difficult for people to have it. The sanitary pad in Cameroon costs about 600 to 800 CFA francs, which is about 0.99 to about $1.31. And this is a country where the minimum wage is about 41,875 francs, which is about $68.7. And it is quite below the poverty line of $2.15 a day. And so it is really difficult for many of these young girls to afford this pad, especially quality pad. Those are the minimum. We have pads that are even more expensive. It is really difficult for them to afford that. And so talking about our challenges in the community, we really want to go further into the different communities to do much more that we are doing. you will see that the need is really, really high, and we intend really to put environmental clubs in different communities and different schools so that this eco-friendly menstrual hygiene can come under it. I would like you to play the video so that we can see, and at the end, I will finish some of the things I have to say after you must have watched the video. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, we have a cool video demonstrating the reusable pads, how they are made. Thank you so much. Thank you, Francoise. Thank you. Amazing work. Amazing work. More efforts like this are needed in our communities, actually, to truly demonstrate that we could move away from our reliance on single-use plastic products, even products as sensitive as sanitary pads. Thank you so much, Francoise, for the work you're doing. And Francoise demonstrated. Thank you, for sure. Francois' demonstration is an excellent segue into the official launch, ladies and gentlemen, of the Life Before Plastic publication by Marisa Naidu. Marisa, GAIA Africa's plastic campaigner and lead author of the publication. Over to you, Marisa. Take it away, please.
Thank you so much, Hamza. I am super excited, and I am so glad that this publication has finally gotten off the ground. I think it comes at such an opportune moment for all of us when leaders around the world are negotiating on a global and legally binding plastics treaty. And, you know, we really wanted to showcase the practices around Africa and demonstrate that solutions can be found within our own continent, you know, for the global audience. So it gives me great pleasure and tremendous excitement to officially launch this much-awaited publication, which is titled The Life Before Plastic, Demonstrating Traditional Practices of Reuse in Africa. This publication holds a very personal significance to me and is very close to my heart because it has been something that I very much wanted to explore, given the rich plastic-free traditions and history, as well as practices in Africa, and considering that Africa is currently leading and paving the way on plastic laws and policies. Next slide, please, Carissa. Next slide. So as I begin to unpack the publication in all its glory, my colleague Andrea will be attaching the link to this much-awaited publication, which has, you know, it really sort of teams with vibrant colors, really showcasing that Africa is a bubbling pot of rich plastic-free traditions and practices. So it gives me great pleasure to actually launch this with all of you today. And before I give you a sneak peek into the publication itself, it will only be fitting that I acknowledge and thank the respective individuals and organizations without whose invaluable contributions this publication would not have been possible. Next slide, please. At the very heart of this publication is the insightful information that GAIA and BFFP Africa member organizations have provided us with on the existing and emerging zero waste practices around the continent. We also have our compilation and review team to be thanked for their expertise, and this includes my colleagues Kenza, Farima, Niven, Carissa, Niba, Anna, as well as our creative team of designers, which includes Patricia May Ferriol, as well as Anika Hernandez, and lastly, our research team, which is M&G Consultants. So a huge round of applause to all of you for making this vision come to life, and thanking you for all your efforts in putting this together. Next slide, please. Next slide. So in this publication, it journeys through the life before plastic, right? And we wanted to truly explore, firstly, the problem of plastics on the continent. So without giving too much away and really wanting to encourage you to actually go ahead and read the publication, I'm going to only give you very short snippets from what it was all about. So we first off start by examining the laws and the policies and multilateral environmental agreements that have been put in place in Africa to govern waste management and trade. However, the publication more importantly showcases examples of traditional practices that are made from natural materials widely used across the African continent as alternatives to plastic. As I said, we wanted to really hone in on what are the solutions that exist in our backyard. Further, GAIA and BFFP Africa members provide an insight on the existing reuse and refill systems on the continent and examine how reuse and refill can be made a stronger part of Africa's journey towards ending plastic pollution. The publication concludes and delves into how current and traditional zero waste practices and systems can be sustained into the future by providing and addressing recommendations on corporate accountability, policymakers' responsibility, and consumer responsibility through making zero waste a lifestyle change. Next slide, please. So as we begin to get into each chapter of the publication itself, this publication comprises of 4 chapters in its totality. The very first chapter aims to critically examine the problem of plastics on the African continent, its root cause and key contributing sources of plastic waste generation. The impacts and injustices across the plastics life cycle are also brought to the forefront. Having identified the problem, the chapter 1, that is, slowly navigates into Africa's fight against plastic, drawing attention and emphasizing 2 integral regional policy frameworks that stand out as being progressive in addressing plastic pollution and its transboundary nature. This includes decisions from the AMCEN, which is the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, as well as the Bamako Convention. So we wanted to show that, we also have laws and policies in place and frameworks that govern plastic pollution. We also wanted to be able to capture Africa's response in this way to the plastic problem, being a critical step in identifying the level of ambition and commitment our African policymakers and leaders possess to course correct the plastics crisis, and having legislated the most number of plastic bans and regulations on the globe. That is, almost 37 countries have passed laws in Africa out of the 54 countries around plastics. The end of chapter 1, however, is the beginning of something beautiful, which paves the way for the rest of the publication to tell the story of Africa's zero waste journey that represents an uncharted bright spot of hope in addressing Africa's plastic pollution crisis. Through time and through the lenses of our members from across the continent, while recognizing that subtle nuances do exist and that may emerge from our socioeconomic factors, culture, our political environments, corporate practices, and differences in geography, but that does not stop us from mapping the solutions that exist on the continent. Next slide, please. Chapter 2 is really one of our showstopper chapters, as well as Chapter 3. Chapter 2 creatively explores traditional alternatives to plastic that are still in use on the African continent, its effectiveness and scalability towards a sustainable future, and to end plastic waste and pollution. It aims to provide an overview of the behaviors and practices while recognizing that these nuances do exist on the continent. The practices that are highlighted in this chapter serve as alternatives to single-use plastic across the continent and were categorized in the following ways. We had different categories of how African communities have been finding their solutions to plastic through the use of plant leaves, wood and clay, cloth, natural cleaning products, and traditional food preservation techniques that have been passed on and carried on for decades. These traditional practices showcase how regions across Africa have inherently embraced sustainable and well-adapted methods long before the concept of zero waste became widely recognized. These practices not only promote environmental sustainability, but they also connect communities with their cultural heritage. All the materials that are used are easily biodegradable and reusable, and they allow local economies to flourish as these materials are sourced locally. They require local knowledge systems and keep local crafts and skills alive. However, Chapter 2 also realistically concludes with an open mind and a call to action. That is, whilst these practices all have their merits, it is important for us to still recognize that they do face challenges in truly becoming scalable, which is the age of modernization, urbanization, and changing consumer preferences. Therefore, a combination of preserving traditional practices and integrating modern, sustainable approaches can be one comprehensive strategy to promoting effective waste reduction and environmental conservation. These practices are effective and scalable and can be integrated into reuse and recycling systems. But if and only when it displaces new plastic material production that is free from toxics. And lastly, in order for traditional practices to be truly effective in addressing plastic pollution, an overall reduction of plastic production is needed, which is what this chapter aims to shine the light on as well. Next slide, please. Chapter 3, on the other hand, makes a case for how reuse and refill can become a stronger part of Africa's zero waste journey by helping readers better understand the concepts of reuse and refill and mapping the diverse reuse and refill models in Africa, citing both traditional, existing, and emerging models, and proposing concrete actions to integrate them into the fabric of Africa's zero waste aspirations. And this includes and can only be achieved if we pay homage to culture and community, political will, investment and innovation, resource conservation, awareness raising, and behavioral changes. This chapter also rewards readers with 2 bonus feature stories on why reuse and refill systems are integral in addressing Africa's water crisis, and it also provides us with a tour of the famous traditional souks or markets in Morocco by Hamza himself. Next slide, please. Chapter 4, on the other hand, is the last and final chapter in the publication. It is the chapter where we have truly carved the way forward with recommendations from GAIA and BFFP Africa members in preserving the longevity of solutions presented in the earlier chapters well into the future. Based on the responses from our members across Africa, there seems to be definitely a renewed interest in sustainable practice that came long before life was packaged in plastic. one that encompasses traditional practices, contemporary methods, and emerging environmentally sound technologies. It is about a future that is incepted on real solutions that demonstrates the power to reduce overall plastic production through alternative delivery systems, zero-waste communities, and reuse and refill systems that respects our planetary boundaries. However, the chapter takes into consideration that all of this can only be achieved through the collective efforts from corporations demonstrating accountability, policymakers implementing legally binding policies, such as the Global Plastics Treaty, and consumers recognizing their power and right to a safe, clean, and healthy environment that is toxic-free. Next slide, please. So to conclude my presentation, let us all remember that life was lived before it was being packaged in plastic in Africa. This report has clearly demonstrated that Africa can pave and lead a sustainable path to zero-waste future, where reuse and refill systems represents a vital opportunity to move away from the existing linear take, make, waste packaging economy and is tailor-made to suit the local context for successful adoption, long-term impact, and play a central role in eliminating single-use plastic pollution. This publication has placed the vision of our Africa membership at the forefront of the solutions to end plastic pollution. On that high note, I thank you once again for joining us all here today, and I'm now going to hand back to our energetic facilitator, Hamza. Thank you, Hamza.
Whoa. I cannot wait to read that publication just from the overview you gave us. Thank you so much, Marisa. That was so insightful. Thank you. And if that leaves you a bit wanting more, and if you want to know more about the publication, we have here with us Kenza Lescam, GAIA Africa's North Africa coordinator, and also one of the publication's authors, to share with us a little bit more about Africa's zero waste practices and the diverse use and refill systems from the publication. So yeah, please take it away, Kenza.
Hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Kenza, and I'm joining you today from Marrakesh, Morocco. I unfortunately don't have a cool hat, but I do have a headscarf, so that would be it for me today. I have been working with GAIA for a few years now, and I'm so excited for this long-awaited publication. It took us a few months to bring this together, and here we are, finally launching it today. So before I start sharing about my personal experience writing this piece, I would first like to thank my colleagues and now friends for the feedback and patience that were needed throughout this process. And I would especially like to thank Marissa Naidu for her leadership and steering the boat and congratulate her on her first GAIA publication. It was an honor to write with you. So as Marissa has shown a little bit what the publication is about, I thought that my presentation would be more on what it meant and what it felt like to write this piece. So I want to take you back a little bit to when I was around 12 years old, and then microwaves started appearing in Morocco. And as a middle-class family, it was only logical in our consumerist world that we would get one in my family. And so I think a few years later, awareness about the harms of putting plastics in the microwave or exposing plastics to heat spread fast. And in my family or in my household, we stopped putting any kind of plastic Tupperware plates or cups in the microwave. And I think this was the first time when we had, or at least as a person, I had an awareness about a certain material and how toxic it could be, and that especially plastics, and how I think as a child that not everything that is sold to us is necessarily good for us. And then my other big awakening moment was when I moved to the US for my studies. And when you move abroad, you really find yourself alone without any sense of community, any family to reach out to, and you're just starting to make friends slowly. And so, as any good Moroccan would do, I had to I looked for people to connect with. So for me, it was normal that you'd go to the shop every day, to the grocer every day, to the fruit vendor, to the butcher, bakery, and those are the people you start getting to know, and those are the people that you start saying hello to. They check on you from time to time and everything. But those kinds of places do not exist in the global north, and so what I started to feel is you have big supermarkets with big parking lots and lots of packaging. And so that was the first time I was thinking about how packaging actually, and plastic packaging, separates you from the other or the person. So consumer to vendor, there was no daily interaction with anyone when I was trying to find a sense of community. So like I said, back home, I would know the butcher's kids. I went to school with them, but in the US, it was just aisles and aisles of products wrapped in plastic and no human contact, no good morning, no how is so-and-so. So I began to associate plastic with the lack of human connection, the lack of weaving lives together, the lack of sharing and caring about people around us and about what we consume. So you can only imagine how excited I was when Marissa invited me to collaborate on this piece, on this publication. I have had a love-hate relationship with plastic because, of course, we use it, especially hard plastics. But I also think it's it's very deterrent in human connections. So while I've throughout my time with GAIA, I've also had the chance to work with and visit different African countries. And then I wanted to, and then I realized how many shared practices and traditions we have. So writing this piece was also, and getting the responses from all of our members, my chapter was about collating answers from our members, was a true voyage throughout the continent. So maybe, Carissa, if you could share to slide 24, please. And so right here, this is the only page I will share with you from from the publications, and this is just to encourage you to go and read it. And so I was speaking of shared practices between different countries in on the continent. And so for example, we have things like raffia and reed and sisal and dried palm leaves that are used to make baskets, mats, seats, beds, roofs, and umbrellas. And these you can find, and even fans, these you can find in countries like Morocco, Ethiopia, Uganda, Cameroon, Tanzania, Rwanda, and I'm sure you can find them in other places as well that were not surveyed for the purposes of this publication, for example. I think we are all also familiar with cloth diapers. We remember them, we've used them, we've seen them being used. Not long ago, we still see them being used in many places. For example, we're also very familiar with clay pots, wooden utensils, and all of these things. And so this chapter highlights what all the I don't want to call they're alternatives to single-use plastics, but I want to call them things that we've been using that maybe yes, maybe plastics is trying to replace in our cultures. And so yeah, this also, I think, knowing that these same materials and same utensils are being used all over bears witness to the shared traditions on the continents, traditions of craftsmanship, we have to remember and remind each other of these alternatives and encourage our locally made handicrafts. I think they help the local economy and create a strong sense of community. And of course, I think to finish on a great note, all of these alternatives are compostable or truly recyclable, making them zero waste. So with this said, I truly encourage you to go check out the publication. It's a real journey throughout the continent. It's a real call to preserve traditions, preserve the way we do things, our connections with each other. And also, I think it's a way to, it's a sense of pride as well. And yes, I think I just encourage you to go ahead and read it and take the voyage as I did while writing it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you so much, Kenza. I think it's really interesting how the publication was able to capture all of these diverse practices from the GAIA Africa membership. And speaking of GAIA members, we have a few members with us today who were personally featured in the publication, who are legends of the game. They will be sharing their insights that they contributed directly to the publication. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Farima Tijani, founder of Andansonia Green from Senegal, and also one of the lead authors of the publication. We have with us Eskadar Aguichu, excuse me, Executive Director of Eco-Justice Ethiopia, and we have Anna Rosha, of course, Global Plastic Program Director for GAIA, Tanzania. We have Edwin Mambre, Director of Center of Citizens Conserving Environment and Management, CESIC, Uganda. They will first give us some insights on the type of traditional zero waste practices or plastic alternatives that still exist in their communities or countries until today, and how effective these practices are in reducing the amount of plastic waste there is in their countries and communities. Let's start with you, Farima. Can you tell us more about these practices in Senegal, please?
Hello, Hamza. Thank you for your question. I'm very happy to be here today. So for me, what is most important when we talk about how we can tackle plastic is first how we can avoid using anything. So before even using something different, I want to show what we do in Senegal, for example, where I live, to avoid having waste. So the first thing is that in my country, in Senegal, also because we don't have much money to spend to spend on that, but every day people will go and buy their food to the market. They will not buy food for 1 month or food for 1 week. And doing that, they will cook everything that they buy, and there will be no waste for food. So for me, this is something that is really nice because there will be no leftover. And for the food also, I'm not going to talk about packaging. I will leave packaging to other. But for the food, the thing is that when we finish eating, we always have other people to give the rest of the food to if we have too much food. And then for the food that is not edible by humans, we always have some animals that are in our garden, in our neighbor's garden, like chicken, chips, rabbits, who we give the food to. Another practice that I want to share is that, because Marisa showed the picture on her presentation, is that when we drink tea, usually, we don't need a single-use cup, because actually, in the sense of sharing, we'll only have 2 or 3 cups of tea that will be shared between everyone. So you will drink quickly, you will rinse it and give it to someone else. So I find it very nice, and it avoids the single-use cup. I will stop there for now.
Thank you so much, Farima. Let's move to Iskandar. Can you tell us more about these practices in Ethiopia, please?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Hamza. In Ethiopia, we have a very diverse culture of utilizing, natural materials for packaging, that includes the baskets that we take to the market to buy produces, and even the nature of the markets themselves. If you see the way the produce is brought and sold, it is really promoting a reuse and a sustainable culture, because the products are brought in bigger reusable bags or cartons or packaging materials that were made from wooden crate. And then customers, especially in the rural parts of Ethiopia, also always bring their own traditional woven baskets that are made from organic materials to purchase their own goods. And our staple food itself, that's called injera, is a utensil. As you know, Ethiopians eat with their hands. We eat with our hands, and the staple food that goes with almost everything we eat is used as basically a container in itself, and also as a utensil, because that's how we carry the food to our mouths instead of using forks and spoons. And we also have a very diverse and long-standing culture of utilizing beverage containers that are made from clay and other materials that are found naturally. And our Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, and the process of making coffee, the traditional way of making coffee, involves a clay pot and clay cups to drink, that is still being used all over the country, and still being promoted also abroad. If you take a look at coffee pictures from Ethiopia, you'll always find the clay pots and the clay cups. So we have all these kind of experiences in terms of using reusable materials for our daily lives.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Iskandar. Thank you. Anna, can we go over to you in Tanzania?
Of course, and my
Absolutely.
pleasure. So before leaving Dar es Salaam, which is where I live right now, I used to live in rural Tanzania. So I spent actually 7 years in the villages. And in the villages, we actually very rarely use single-use plastics, or we very rarely use it to use single-use plastics, because pretty much everything is reusable. And so if you want to buy rice or beans or grains or flour, you always do that in reusable containers. That's how it is. You go to the shop, you get whatever amount you need, and you take it home, which is actually great as well, because people several times don't actually have the means to buy a certain quantity that has been predefined by the company instead of based on their needs. So they can actually go to the shop and buy what they actually, the amounts that they actually need, and the amounts that they can actually afford. So it's very different. And that is the same, for example, for tea leaves. We buy tea leaves that way. If you go to the market, yes, as everyone else mentioned here, baskets and all of that. So for pretty much everything, even beverages like sodas and the like, are still sold in reusable bottles in rural Tanzania. And the plastic, the single-use plastic, is actually very recent. That is from about, I would say, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, when those started coming, with this idea that that the companies are providing that for low-income communities to be able to access small quantities of whatever it is, which is fake, because we have always had access in rural Tanzania, and we are talking about low-income communities. We have access to whatever it is that we need or can afford in the quantities that we actually need and can afford, without the need of the packaging. And so there are so many different, even in Dar es Salaam, if you move around and if you want to buy a snack, you usually have people selling snacks on trays, and you just get whatever amount you can based on what you need. You can use a toothpick, for example, to pick something, whatever it is, and all of that without single-use plastics.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you. Edwin, can you take us to Uganda, please?
Yes, thank you. Everyone, thank you for joining. I'll be sharing a perspective on Uganda. And Uganda is has several cultures, so I'll be sharing a few of the practices that are still existing within various tribes. I'll start with the food. You know, food is very important. Yeah, we still have people using clay pots to cook their food, to store their smoked meats. We still have people who are using clay plates. I've used one. It is nice. And actually, because they hold the natural aroma of the sauce that you're eating, so it's some of these are still in the communities. And now that we have cultural events, it's kind of like rolling back in the new norm where we have been using plates and other plastic disposable plates. So we are seeing a change now in the things that we are going to be using in our homes, because we are trying to go back to the traditional way, because we now have plastic spoons, we now have straws that are made from plants. For example, the young bamboo that is cut and then it still has a hole inside. We have those straws now in some places that are selling soft drinks. We have now banana leaves. This is still being used almost across all over Uganda. Instead of using polythene bag to cover your food, which is being practiced in Uganda by people that can't afford the banana leaves, depending on where they live, especially those that live in urban areas. They sometimes cover their food with a polythene bag, then add a saucepan on top. But now, because the ministry has really spread information about the dangers of using such, now people are slowly switching back to the use of banana leaves in covering the food while cooking. Secondly, it's also being used to cover like snacks, like local snacks called kabalagala. They are made from yellow bananas. Banana leaves play a very important role actually in Uganda, because they are also used as plates, by the way. You dig a small hole and then put the banana leaves and then put the food on top of the banana leaves and then you start eating. We also have calabashes. These ones they were used previously for, serving a drink when you visit someone, but it's still in existence in Uganda. Now we are having people who are trying to modernize it by putting some branding and to make sure that it coexists with the current situation that we live in. So those are some of the traditional methods that are still being used in Uganda. Thank you. Over to you, Jamal.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Excuse me. Thank you so much, Edwin. That was so insightful. And again, we welcome everyone's comments and questions. We will set a specific time for responding to these questions. So please go to the Q&A section and make your comments and questions known to the panelists. So this one is only for Anna. Anna, maybe we can ask you to share with us, how do you think these practices can be scaled up? I mean, to becoming a large scale and to becoming a viable solution or viable alternatives to ending plastic pollution. Do you think that the Global Plastic Treaty can play a role in this? You have 5 minutes. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Hamza. Of course that it can. So the Global Plastic Treaty, and for people who are not familiar with the Global Plastic Treaty, this is an environmental agreement that is being negotiated currently under the UN. And the goal of this agreement is basically ending plastic pollution. So just a very tiny little goal, as you can imagine. I think we all suffer with plastic pollution, and everything that we just talked about in this webinar is basically what the way that we have been conducting life all the way before very recently. And for some reason right now, we talk about plastics as if we could not live without it, when we have lived without it for centuries and centuries. And the development that plastics is bringing to life is not an actual development, because it comes with a lot of harm for health, harm for the environment, and also harm for the traditional practices that we have and that allow income to be generated to multiple people. So the I would say that the plastic model of production, the production model that actually relies on plastic materials for pretty much everything, ends up benefiting very few people, while the traditional practice actually benefited way more people. And so how can we actually scale this up? So the truth is that everything that I just talked about is happening despite pretty much zero incentive from any of our governments. There is no policy, there is no tax, there is no incentive for this to be scaled up. And it's still happening. And so if governments actually create the right incentives, everything that I just talked about could actually grow. We have the knowledge, especially in Africa, we have the knowledge. We have the people who still carry the practice and can teach other people to do it. And so all that we need is basically a little bit of goodwill from the governments. And we also need, which is very important actually, because the way that the plastic industry has been portraying things is that if you want to be clean, if you want to be cool, if you want to be fancy, if you want to be developed, we need plastics. And we need a narrative that actually changes this narrative. Because plastics are not cool, they are not clean, they are not healthy, and they are not a way for us to achieve development. They are not developing our countries, they are actually harming our countries. And so if we actually have a good campaign that make people proud of their traditional practices, and people can go there and say, okay, I am proud of being able to make a hat like this. I am proud because I have the knowledge to produce this basket. I am proud that I'm going to the market and not selling my produce in plastic bags. I think that's extremely important. And then governments actually putting policies in place to incentive the traditional practices is extremely important. And now, if you have these allied to global targets that actually change the production system from single-use based to then reuse based, and we actually prioritize the redesign of products, and then we're talking about a global scale. And in that global scale, countries need to basically adapt the way they're producing, the way they're importing products, not allowing certain practices, and then going there and redesigning, ensuring that design is intentional for people to be able to use those containers for as long as possible. If we put systems in place that include waste pickers as well, include the people that have been working with within the plastics economy, but not necessarily by choice. So we actually include people in the reuse systems, then we can generate employment, we can generate income, we can have actually a healthy and clean way of producing, and we can also value what we should be valuing, which is the way that we have been living, producing, and interacting with each other for centuries. And for now, for some reason, someone is telling you that's not the right way. It is the right way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. I think this gives us a great opportunity to share with each other our feelings about how Africa has the potential to strengthen reuse and refill as a part of its zero waste journey to ending plastic pollution or to end waste in general. What will be needed and why? Perhaps we can start with Eskada, followed by Edwin. Please, Eskada, can you take it away? What is needed and why?
So in Africa, what we have to understand is that it is actually the easiest for us Africans to get rid of plastics, because we have been using it for relatively the shortest period of time compared to the rest of the world. And three, economically, we would benefit a lot from it because we're not producing it in the country. That means precious foreign currency that we have can actually be utilized for more productive purposes. When you go to the markets in any African big cities, it's annoying to see the amount of plastics in every sector. So, for example, I cannot go with my kids to the shopping malls because the shiny plastics will take, the attention of my 2-year-old right away, and that he would want to grab something, like immediately. And they are designed and made that way. And they are designed and made that way by, not by us. And they are not designed and made that way not for our benefits, but they are only benefiting, the producers who sell those products that one harms the health and then immediately goes into the waste stream, and they just don't have any value. So I really believe that Africa has all the incentives, if it chooses to look at it the right way, to actually go back to the more sustainable option, because it makes sense, from the economic perspective, from the health perspective, and even from our social cultural values perspective. So what we need now is the right laws and policies to actually have the people move that way. And hopefully with the Global Plastics Treaty, now we are also trying to build momentum in our respective countries to actually bring back attention to reusables and the old way, how the old way of doing things was actually more beneficial for everyone.
Oh, thank you, Iska. That was amazing. Edwin, what do you think would be needed and why for you? You're muted, Edwin. You could unmute, please.
I think what we need to do is we need to focus on two things. That's from my side. One is we need to focus more on local innovations to make sure that the entrepreneurs really add some magic to the cultural methods that we used to use in terms of the alternatives that we used to use before to the plastics. Because if you look at the various cultures, they had their own ways of doing things minus the plastics. So if we can get innovators that can really bring back these methods in this generation, then we shall be chasing away plastics, because we had our own way of preserving food, packing food, storing. Now we are using plastics. So if we can try to bring back those old ways and then try to modify them a little bit, we shall be able to kick away the plastics. Secondly, we need to engage our various governments on the need to focus more on plastic alternatives. By doing this, we need to focus more on the cultural knowledge, which we are basically not, which our governments is basically not ignoring, because culturally, each culture had its own way of doing things, and they depended on the environment. So if we look at these ways, we shall be killing two birds with one stone. We shall be preserving the environment, because at the end of the day, most of these things that they were using were coming from the environment, like the calabash. At the end of the day, you're conserving the environment and also trying to reduce the plastic pollution. Why we need this? We need to reduce plastic pollution because at the end of the day, the local citizens suffers more, especially here in Uganda, where the drainage systems are being blocked by plastic bottles. We have microplastics in our food everywhere. And at the end of the day, these populations are getting sick, and we have limited access to specialized medication in Uganda, less medicine in hospitals. So it really affects the whole entire system in which we live in Uganda. So if we try to cut out the plastic pollution and the dependence on plastics, we shall be solving so many problems that are linked to the usage of plastics. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Edwin. That was so insightful. Anna, over to you. What will be needed and why, do you think?
I think it's a lot of the things that people have already mentioned. So I think like one, pride and the recognition that the practices that have been imposed on us are part of colonialism, and we need to reject them. Waste colonialism is not just about waste being shipped to other countries, it's also about production systems that generate waste being imposed on countries. And so the recognition of that and the understanding that that's not the way they would like to go forward, I think that's one portion. I think there are so many incentives that we can have at the policy level to actually prioritize local businesses, prioritize local consumption, prioritize traditional ways of producing. So all of that is something that is in our hands and that governments can do to make sure that reuse, refill, and all these practices are part of the production that we are both doing and aiming for. And I think a little bit of, I would say, education as well for people to understand that valuing our culture goes beyond knowing how to sing our national anthems and all of that. Is actually about valuing the ways that we use it to live that are ours and not imposed by others on us. And so I think those would be the things that I would mention here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. Farima, over to you. What will be needed and why?
This is very difficult to give me the last spot for this question. Thank you, Hamza.
And I still have another question for you.
So for me, on top of everything that has been said, for me, what is needed is something that is systemic. Because if everyone is doing its own reusable product or stuff like that, it will be nice. But if there is something that is more systemic and with everything that is handled by an external system that will make people life easier to use the product that pose, it will be great because it will make it cheaper and it will make people not think of it. And every time we think about plastic single use, people are like, yes, but it's making our life easier. So we have to come with solutions that are good for the earth, but also make people life easier with an affordable price.
Thank you. And yeah, this one is only for you, as I said. I think we've gotten a really good insight into what to expect as some of the key ideas and discussion points that surface throughout the publication. And as with any publication, there has to be a call to action, right? So Farima, can you close our discussion off with how do you think corporates, policymakers, and consumers can demonstrate better accountability when it comes to making zero waste possible and sustainable? You have 5 minutes, Farima. Take it away.
So thank you. Thank you for your question. I like the way you ask it because you're talking about the three pillars of the society. So it's important to know that not only one pillar can do everything. So a citizen must not say, yes, I'm buying because businesses are selling me, and businesses should not say, yes, I'm doing it because the state is allowing me. Everyone should be accountable. For everyone to be accountable, everyone should have awareness raising first, because if they don't know, they will not change it. So first, everyone needs to know how they can help other work toward this transition. For citizens, we must tell them they must understand that the power of buying is very important. If you don't buy a product, if you don't vote for someone, etc., it will not happen. So our power is super important, and only 3.5% of the population without a violent movement can change a population. So also what we do as a single person can seem to be very small or very useless, but it is useful. And people usually react by mimicking other people. So when you do it, other people will do it. So we have a strength. For government, for me, it's very important that they will do some incentive before punishing, and also that they will accompany citizen and entrepreneur or companies to go toward this change. They will not just come and say, you have to change. They have to help do capacity building, do some incentives that will help people to transition. And then after a while, they can start punishing. But for me, it has to go through a certain pattern of capacity building and changing what we were doing before to go to a more environmental friendly way. And then for businesses, they have to be able to build a business model that is not only based on within the business model, we have to take into account what we earn as a company, but also what we earn for the environment. And we have to stop all this taxation and stuff that will give them fake money to us to think that plastic is cheap, but it's not. And we have to put the real price of what we are using. And within this price, we have to take into account the environment.
Thank you, Farima. That was so insightful. Thank you so much. Well, a huge thank you to each and every one of you and all the other members that have truly contributed to making this publication a success. I think you have all definitely caught our attention to sit down and read and appreciate this publication for all the insight that is worth. On this note, I want to invite Carissa Manes, GAIA Africa's communication lead, to tell us how we can all get involved to promote this publication and the diversity of solutions that shine bright on the African continent to ending this plastic pollution crisis. Over to you, Carissa.
Thank you, Hamza. So yes, we have a promotional kit to spread the word about this amazing publication. And yeah, I just wanted to invite you to use our launch toolkit. I'm going to quickly share my screen so that I can talk you through it as we go through it. Perfect. Okay, so firstly, and hopefully everyone can see my screen, but firstly, we have a social media toolkit. So over the past few weeks in the build up to the publication launch, we've been posting videos of our speakers that you've seen here today about what plastic, what was life before plastic. And so we would encourage you to share those videos. They're really insightful. We have quote cards, and we also have different posters that you can also adapt. If you are interested in doing a launch event like we had today within your own community or hosting your own webinar, we encourage you to reach out to us. We have a ton of things that have you covered for your own launch event. We have a facilitation guide, we have PowerPoints, we even have editable posters that you can adapt. If you are familiar with using Canva, you can adapt those. But again, we encourage you to reach out to us and we can talk you through the process. Yeah, and then lastly, if you want to have a hard copy of the publication itself, we do have the publication available for downloading, a print version in English and French. So you can feel free to make copies of that. It's a very useful resource to have a hard copy of. And then, yes, again, we have, just a whole run of show that you can use for your own launch event if you're interested. So Andy's going to drop some links on where you can find this member launch toolkit, and we hope we use it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Carissa. And Andy now is going to add the link for the publication and promotional toolkit in the chat. The moment that we've been waiting for since months and months now. I'm super excited, and I know the team is so excited. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Before we close, does anyone have any questions, comments, love for the publication? Your questions can be directed to Kenza, Marissa, or Farima, who were all authors of the publication. Do you have any questions, please? You could mention it on the Q&A box. Or you can turn on your mic and ask your question yourself if you want to. I think everything is clear, hopefully. Well, yeah, the link for the publication is going to be shared right now. Yeah. and the toolkit as well. So yes, please check out the publication and the promotional toolkit once again. It was lovely having you. It was a wonderful party. Yes, this is the way we party. We're getting old, and I guess this is the only way we party nowadays. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please, happy to answer your questions and direct it to the panelists. I guess we have a hand up. Kenza, go ahead.
I just want to thank you, Hamza, for facilitating the session and bringing the great energy to all the speakers and everyone who has joined us also from all over the world. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And as I said in the first, I love GAIA reports. This is a huge pleasure for me to be doing this. Thank you for trusting me with this, actually. Thank you, GAIA team. Thank you, Break Free from Plastic.
Thank you so
Africa.
much, Hamza.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Marisa.
much, everyone. We sincerely appreciate all of you being here
Bye-bye.
and receiving this with such open arms. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you. I
everyone.
appreciate you, Marisa,
Everyone.
Anna,
Thank
and all.
you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
I'm not leaving, I'm staying here.
You're welcome to stay, Karinga. It's a party. We can have an after party. Karine, where's the music?
Who is hosting the after party?
Yes,
At the end of
music.
at the end of
Music.
every party, we're like, in which house are we going to? Where is the after party?
Here we go.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday.
Son cœur ne connaît pas de frontières. Chez elle, on peut danser, pieds nus en regardant vers la mer. Il y a en elle 10 000 couleurs. Le soleil et la terre s'invitent chez elle, c'est le bonheur. Chez Mama Africa. Chez Mama Africa. C'est là-bas que j'aime aller. Maman
Everyone
dit
so much to
toujours
stay with us
la
and party.
Les sons
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
à ce qu'il paraît, aurait fait l'homme à son image. Chez Mama Africa. Chez Mama Africa. Chez Mama Africa. Chez Mama Africa.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We're now going to close the room before this party gets out of hand. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. And thank you once again.
Bye.
Bye.